أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today I want to talk about the topic of making graves, making tombs over them, plastering them, making them higher than the ground. The reason why I am making this video is because I came across a brother who is a Barelvi, and he made a video where he is showing specific scholars saying that making the graves of the prophets or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is actually against the Sunnah. Yes, so this brother, because he is against these specific scholars, he is saying that these scholars are wrongfully using hadith about the mushrikeen on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as you will see in the video.
يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا حبيب.
So as you can see in the video, the brother has mentioned, or in writing he has given us, that these scholars are basically humiliating the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that his grave should be level to the ground and not like how we see them or how we see the graves which are elevated above the ground, meaning the graves that we see in Pakistan and India, the graves that we see in around the world, where the tombs are made over them, buildings are made over them, and then people go there and they seek blessings from them. Now again, like the brother has mentioned in the video, or as he has given the caption, he says that these scholars are humiliating because they are using false hadith that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he used, or he said about the mushrikeen, that destroy these graves which are over the ground or which are higher than the ground. Yes, so he is saying that this is a humiliation to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, I personally believe, and from my research and from the hadith that I've read, I personally think that this brother is unaware of these hadith, and maybe he has to do a little bit of more research. And the reason why I say so is because without, any kind of proof, any evidence, any hadith, the brother is trying to show that we can make graves that are higher than the ground. Now, before I go to any Quran, any hadith, I would like to first of all give this brother a background check, meaning that he has to look at what is going on in his own home. Now, if we go to the book of Al-Fuzate al-Hazrat, where his own teacher, his own scholar has said, Imam Ahmad Raza Khan Barelvi was asked about the question about making graves higher than the ground, and to which Imam Ahmad Raza Khan Barelvi, he says that this is against the Sunnah. Yes, to make the graves higher than the ground. And then he said that a grave should be at least one handspan, meaning if you were to touch the ground, it should be at least, this should be the size. The interesting part is that Imam Ahmad Raza Khan Barelvi, he says that this is against the Sunnah. Now we have to go to the Sunnah, we have to go to the Hadith and see which specific Sunnah this is against. So as the brother mentioned in the video, where he said that the Hadith of the mushrikeen, the Prophet mentioned the mushrikeen, and these people are using them on the Prophet. Let's exactly see what the Prophet really said. So if we go to some of the Hadith in Bukhari, in Muslim, in the main major books of of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we will see that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam very categorically he made statements about plastering graves, sitting over graves. Now it is an ijma of the Muslims that we are not allowed to sit on graves. We are not allowed to sit on graves because it's like a humiliation to the grave. We are not respecting. So if Sunnis are accepting that sitting on the grave is disrespecting, then the same hadith also says that making tombs or making buildings or plastering graves instead, The hadith specifically mentions that plastering graves, sitting on graves, it is haram, it is forbidden, you should not be doing this. Now, if we were to take the hadith that says that do not sit on the grave, then the same hadith mentions do not plaster graves. And when you plaster graves, they are always above the ground. Also, what this brother was mentioning in the video, that this was about the mushrikeen. Now, there are some hadiths that mention the mushrikeen, and a lot of these hadiths also mention the Jews and the Christians. Now, for example, there's a hadith before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he passed away. Before he passed away, he was in a very bad state. He was really poorly. He was not feeling well, and he would always be laying down. And whilst he was laying down with his blanket over his face, he would, in that bad state, in that poor state, he would still open his blanket, and he would say, "Curse be upon the Jews and the Christians, because they made the graves of their pious people as places of worship, and they put pictures on them, they made them higher than the ground, X, Y, and Z," he said. Now, if we were to look at this hadith, why would the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why would he, moments before he's passing away, why would he go and send curse upon the Jews and the Christians? It doesn't make sense if you are going to say that this was only for the Jews and Christians, but the Muslims can make the graves higher. Going a bit further, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to Hazrat Ali. Now, a Sahaba is reporting from Hazrat Ali saying that Hazrat Ali told me that, "Shall I not send you on the same mission as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he sent me upon, which was to go and destroy and level every grave to the ground, meaning as the same level as the ground." Now, again, reading this hadith, I've mentioned this hadith before as well. When I mention to specific people, because they want to defend this, they say that no, again, this is not the graves of the Muslims. This was the graves of the kuffar, maybe the mushrikeen, maybe the Jews and the Christians. But then, if we were to go a step ahead, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he instructed that graves should be leveled to the ground, and these people say that this is mentioning the kuffar, well, there's another hadith that mentions that two Sahabas, they were about to bury another person, and they were thinking on how we should bury him and how we should make his grave. And then one of the Sahabas, he mentions that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that do not make the grave higher than the ground. Do not make the grave higher than the ground. So now, forget my understanding, forget your understanding, forget any understanding of any scholar. Let's focus upon the hadith, and let's focus upon what the Sahabas, or how they understood this. So if the Sahabas are saying that Prophet said that we should be leveling the graves, so therefore when we are going to bury him, we are going to level the grave. So where is our position, or what is the worth of our position? What is the status of our position? So this was a quick video I thought I'll make, just to make it clear to the brother. So therefore maybe he can learn from me, and maybe in the upcoming days I can maybe learn from him. So let's humble ourselves, and let's learn knowledge from each other. So this was it for the day. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.